Hi there and welcome to JCB Tools. My name's Adrian, and as you can see, we've got a chipper here today, the larger one of the two, the JCB-CH150120PE chipper. I'm going to go through a little bit of troubleshooting, tips and tricks, that sort of thing, especially if you can't get your machine started when it arrives. So, if your machine won't start, there are two possibilities. One is electrical, in that the machine's got no spark, and the second one is fuel side of it. So we'll go through the spark side first and do a little bit of diagnostics. Quick and simple things we can check first, just something we may have done wrong. And then obviously, once we've gone through those, if we've still got no spark, I'll go a little bit deeper into it. So first and foremost, the machine needs to be turned on. I think that's self-explanatory. So the first click is the on position. And obviously, if I crank it, the engine will turn over. But the on position, obviously, when it's running. So we'll take that for granted that we've used the keys and it's turned on and we're not just pulling the recoil. Next, we need to look at two other things, the oil level and the position of the interlocks and the safety. So we have the filler here, or the filler plug. It does have a dipstick on it, but what I say is, with the machine on nice level ground, fill the sump with oil to the weir point of the hole. So that's to the point where if you were to pour any more in, that it would start to dribble back out of the filler here at the bottom. So right up to the weir point of the hole. Obviously, we need to have it that full. The machine does have oil level protection. If the oil level is low, it will kill the spark, and we'll have no spark, we have no running engine. So we are starting with the simple stuff first. The crash bar here, when it's pushed down, kills the spark to the engine. Again, the engine won't start. So if you're trying to start it and this bar is down and it won't start, pull the bar up. That's fairly obvious, I know, but it catches people out regularly. So this machine has two safety interlock switches, one mounted here, and there's another one should you open up the top of the hopper. So you'll see it around the other side. What we need to make sure is that these two bolts that hold this feed hopper closed are tight. If they're not tightened down, the little interlock switch, which is behind this metal plate, won't be pushed back. When it's pushed back, it breaks the circuit, which allows the spark to occur. If this isn't fully closed and the switch not pushed back far enough, the spark will be killed and the engine won't start. So make sure that these bolts are fully tightened. So on the same note, when the machine arrives to you, these two bolts will be fully tightened. However, should you have opened the machine up to clean out any debris that may have got in there or what have you, and you haven't tightened them up fully, there's another interlock switch here. If it's not pulled down completely or it's full of dirt or what have you, there's a good possibility the switch wouldn't have made, and again, you won't have spark and the engine won't start. So always make sure that the area, if you have opened the hopper, is completely clean around here and that both bolts are fully tightened down after inspection. All of the switches, interlocks and all that sort of thing, even the oil level switch, are based on open circuit, so no connection. If we open any one of the doors, anything like that, the switch will make a connection and put basically the earth from the engine onto the spark pack, which kills the spark. So all these junctions are made up pretty much within this box. So if there's anything touching earth in this box, it's possible that that could be the source of the ground that's killing the spark. So I'm just going to take the cover off the box first of all. So there's a load of junction terminals in here, and they all have plastic insulation. But also, for the oil level switch, there's a diode, a square diode in this box. And if anything metal from any of the terminals is touching that diode, that could be the source of the earth that's killing the spark. So we just need to make sure, this is very unlikely, but we do need to make sure that we cover all angles of this troubleshooting, and that we make sure that none of these terminals are touching metal to metal against this diode. So as you can see, all of these terminals, I'm just giving them a quick inspect to make sure that there's nothing slipped back, there's no insulation moved, anything like that, and that nothing's touching metal. Doesn't matter if it's touching the box, but we're just making sure that all the insulation is in place. So let me just demonstrate what could cause that. If I were to pull that insulation back, like that for instance, and when I put the lid on the box, this metal was touching the diode, that would cause the spark to go. So what I'm looking for It's just checking that all the insulation is in place. And it is quite good, and as I say, this is very unlikely. Just make sure that everything's fully insulated within that box. That's good. Okay, and then I can carefully, making sure we've got no trapped wires, locate everything back in its slot and replace the cover. So I'm going to check this interlock switch. Exactly the same applies to the other one. So I'm just going to undo the 4 bolts in turn. Just loosen them off. Might have to go a bit further with these. So I'll undo the 4 bolts and I'll lift the switch out from the back so that you can see what I'm doing. So with the 3 screws removed, I can pull back the cover quite simply. Now, on this switch, what I'm expecting to see is the 2 wires, doesn't matter which way around they go, the 2 wires on the lower portion on these 2 screws and secured tightly in place. Obviously, I can just check these terminals while I'm in there, and they are tight. Now, I don't expect it to be a problem in here, but it's certainly something worth checking. If, for instance, one of these wires are broken and is touching the screw on the other side, either one, then that could cause the problem. It's possible in some instances on these machines, certainly on the other size chipper, it works in such a way that when the switch is pushed, it kills the spark, whereas this one's set up so when it's pushed, it allows the spark. So if these 2 wires were on the top 2 screws, for instance, that would be the cause of your problem. That would mean that the machine would only run when the main hopper door is open, which is obviously not what we want. So everything looks good in there and we've checked it. So the only other possibility is that when it's in place, I'm just going to put that back together, when it's in place, it's not quite pushing far enough to push the switch to click. And there is, if I come up here, I'm going to put it back in a moment, but you can see there's a slot in there. So when we put this back in, we need to push it far enough forward that it's gone to the click and perhaps a little bit more, so that when we tighten up these bolts, it's closed enough to make the switch. So at this point, I think I'll show you how to check to see if we have got a spark. What I'm going to do is use the other model, but it's exactly the same principle, and it's far easier for you to see on the other one. So the next thing, we're going to check and see if we've actually got a spark. So I'll simply pull the spark plug cap off, put it out the way. The tools are provided to remove the spark plug. I'll put the spanner down over the spark plug, loosen it off anti-clockwise. Let me just get in there without getting in the way of the camera. And I'll remove the spark plug. Okay, so got the spark plug removed. What I'm going to do is put the spark plug back in the cap, click it into position, touch it on the body of the machine. So with all the emergency stops removed, nothing switched on, I'm going to pull over the recoil and check to see if I've got a spark. If I've got a spark, we know that there's nothing wrong with anything ignition related, and we'll move on to the fuel side. If I haven't got a spark, we'll move on and we'll check something else. So we're going to move to the other scenario that we have had spark all the while, or that we've done something that's fixed the spark following what we've talked about so far. Anyway, with that said, we now have spark and the engine won't start. Or we've had spark all the while and the engine won't start. The most likely scenario is that it could be the air filter or fuel related. So the machines are run up at the factory. All of the engines probably before they're fitted to the machines. So there could be residual engine oil and residual fuel in the carburetor. You wouldn't normally have oil in the carburetor unless the engine had been on its side, but it is a possibility. So what we would need to do, obviously we've got engine oil in, we've got spark, we've got fuel in. So what we do is turn the fuel off, and we want to remove any perhaps oil or stale remnants of fuel from the float chamber. So you'll see 2 bolts, one vertically going straight up into the carburetor, one on a 45-degree angle approximately. We'd need to undo this plug here. Okay, I've just loosened it off. A receptacle, plastic beaker, coffee cup, something like that, to catch what is probably an egg cup full of fuel left in here. So what I would do then, perhaps have a bit of blue roll to hand, undo the plug and let it drain. Just be careful with the plug, it has a little red washer Careful not to lose that. So we'd let that drain. What I would then do is to flush out any remnants of stale fuel or perhaps engine oil that may be in the float chamber. Just for a second, switch on the fuel tap till you see it start running again, then switch it off and let it completely drip out. Once we've done that, any stale fuel is gone, any fuel engine oil mix is gone. Put the drain plug back in again, turn on the fuel, wait perhaps a minute, then we know we've got nice fresh fuel in the carburetor and the engine should then start. Only one other thing, if I pop up to the fuel filter, it just lifts off. Let me catch it in the right place, there we are. Lift the cover off. So again, if the engine's been on its side, most likely before it was fitted to the machine, but if it has and we've got any sort of oil or debris or anything around the filter, you'll see it would be clogged up with engine oil. That will stop air going in if it had been on its side perhaps. So as long as the air filter's in good nick, the engine should then run. Obviously, if this has happened and you've just received your machine, we'd be more than happy to send you out a replacement air filter. We just need a photograph of it probably. Okay, so that's that. So with all these things done, unless there's something catastrophic, which is even more unlikely, the machine should now start. So obviously when operating a machine like this, you have to think safety. There's wood chippings coming out of here. We've got the wood going in this side. Wear the correct PPE, ear defenders, safety glasses, all of that sort of thing, and keep children, other people, animals away when you're operating it. And again, one important thing to check, when you're running it, start the engine up, get it running, and just check this safety switch. Push it down, the engine should stop. Once the engine's stopped, pop it back up again, restart the engine, and you're good to go. Well, I do hope you found this troubleshooting video with the tips and tricks useful. And for more information on this or any of our other products, visit jcbtools.co.uk. I've been Adrian, and thank you for watching.